Enterprise, where every week I have a conversation with a prominent Black executive that I feel like represents cannabis entrepreneurship in the right way and is making inroads for more of us to come into the space and find success. This woman I have with me this week, Candice Clark, is someone who's dear to me because the one thing I always remember from meeting you was most of the time in business, people always approach you asking for something. They're like, hey, will you give me this? Can you do this for me? You were one of the only people who I ever met. I was looking to plan an event in Chicago at the time, and you reached out to me with like solutions and like options and people you could connect me with. So from that moment, I always knew you were going to be really successful because you understand the value of creating a relationship by giving something and not asking for something. So I'm really honored to have you on and share your perspective with the viewers today.
All right, thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Black Enterprise, Green Enterprise, everyone. This is a great, project that you've been doing. I'm really honored just to be a part of it.
Oh no, it's an honor. It's you're somebody who when I first came into the space, you were one of the first few people I connected with. So you always kind of keep those people in your mind and check in on them from time to time. So I would love for you to give our viewers, before we jump into the cannabis conversation, just a background on you professionally and what you were into before you jumped into cannabis.
Definitely. So, again, Candice Clark. My background is in IT technology. I was actually a government contractor, worked with Homeland Security, worked with the Department of Defense, doing like IT administration, systems admin type work and things like that. So, really just coming into the cannabis space, that was my avenue into the industry, technology and being able to kind of answer these questions for different organizations, also helping them with improving their reach online and, improving their contact and engagement, with their supporters and things like that. So, I mean, when we came into the space, I definitely remember you starting to kind of plan that event. And I really hate, everything happened with the pandemic. I feel like that was going to be so dope, especially in Chicago. But, really just like you said, building relationships like that, that was something that was lacking, in the industry that I came from. So just coming into the cannabis space, I felt like this was a good opportunity to kind of take advantage and build those connections and relationships.
Right. And someone who is as talented and well versed as you, no matter how talented you are when you come into cannabis, it's a lot of like things that shock you and you have to kind of figure out as you go. What were some of the realities of cannabis versus what you maybe have perceived before you jumped into? What was that difference?
You have this perception that there aren't any Black people in the space. That's not true. We're in the space, but we're still in at the point where we're fighting for that ownership and fighting for that real stake in something that's so valuable, something that can be so monumental for generations to come. So that was really something that shocked me, just coming in and really learning about all of the effects of this bad policy and how it's affected these communities and how it still affects communities now. Just kind of seeing the legislation and how things are going, even still, it's certain things in the legislation that, are being put in that may be detrimental in the long haul to the community. But how do we, raise awareness and get our community supporters to rally behind that? So that was something that I didn't really expect to see, but I was happy to see that sense of community, especially here in Chicago.
Right. And when you came into the space, you co-founded High Tech Consulting. And as I've gotten more and more into the industry and I'm building my company, I realized the value of consulting, right? People, if you partner with the right consultant, you'll save yourself a lot of time and energy, right? So, how did you come up with your company? Kind of what did you guys specialize in and what's been the process of getting that off the ground?
Yeah, so it's funny because it really just all spawned from going to a Chicago Normal meeting, a local chapter, here in the city. She just asked the question like, "Hey, who's into IT? Who can help me with tech stuff?" And this was prior to the pandemic. So even before all of that happened, it was definitely a need there. And just from recognizing that need and then building different relationships with different organizations, we've been able to grow into our own agency, providing services around um, project management, mobile development, app development, websites, things like that. And just recently, we got into video production. So that's been going pretty well. And we are just, excited to keep growing and kind of thankful for the pandemic in a way because it highlighted the skills that we had and kind of made it more urgent that people, utilize them.
No, I agree. I think a lot of the young Black companies in the space, we figured out how to turn COVID into a
Yeah,
positive, right? We pivoted because prior to COVID, I think it was like this high barrier of money. Like you needed money to do all these things and this crazy amount of money at
exactly.
that. So with COVID, it kind of leveled the playing field and kind of settled out. And I think companies like yours and mine, we kind of figured out how to maneuver through it. But
Definitely.
are you from Illinois originally?
No, I'm actually from Alabama, from Montgomery, Alabama. I went to Tuskegee University, and that's where I met my husband. So about 4 years ago, we decided to relocate to Chicago.
Oh yeah, I remember it now because I'm from Anderson. Yeah, we talked about that
Right.
before.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to ask you that, people don't really talk much about the Illinois cannabis space, right? Initially, it was a lot of press around how successful it was, quote unquote, as far as like revenue generation. But what's been your experience as an entrepreneur working in that state as it started to kind of roll out?
Like I say, it depends on your perspective and who you are and what you feel like is best for you, whether or not you feel like it's successful. I think it has been successful in, generating that tax revenue and, creating a program that is intended to go back into the community. They actually, recently announced that, and been some questions around, the types of organizations that got funded. Actually, the largest grant, which was $2.5 million, actually went to a former chief of police. So that's one thing I'll say about Illinois. It's a different market. It's a hard market to just really break into if you don't have certain connections and relationships. And that's why, again, we really push that, from within our company and everything that we do. We push that sense of community. How can we gather these resources and make sure that it's disseminated to the people that need it the most? And then how do we assist them in actually being able to attain, these different grants and opportunities that are available? So I think some work can be done in that sense, and making sure that these entrepreneurs are really prepared, to stand up their businesses and they understand what it actually takes.
Right. And a few weeks ago, I'd actually text you because I was trying to put together a list of like Black companies in every legal state. And you were telling me how no Black companies won a license. How do you think that happened? And what do you think the remedy for that needs to be in 2021?
Well, like I said, we're still kind of in the middle of it. As of now, there are no minority owners in the state, but the only people that are currently in operation are from the medical realm. They came in, they got that medical license, and the deal was that they would get an additional recreational license once that legislation passed. So right now, they're still figuring out the lottery. They had the process come out. It was 21 teams that got perfect scores. You have a number of other teams that never got a deficiency notice. They don't know what's going on with their application. Just kind of waiting and seeing. So I think it's definitely some things that Illinois can work on. I wouldn't say it's successful yet. I always say social equity isn't a thing here yet. But
Right.
one model I like is Oakland. I feel like people should definitely pay attention to that model.
Right. And it took Oakland a couple of years to get to that point. But I would love for you to kind of, if you can, go into the weeds a little bit around the Illinois application process. Like, how do you structure a team? What's the cost associated with it? And kind of what's been that process so far?
I mean, we're finding that people are spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars just to, you know, get assistance. You mentioned consulting earlier. That's a major thing here. There were lots of groups that offered different training and assistance. You had the MSOs that were also involved, which is, the multi-state operators, the larger entities. Um, I don't think it's a good process. It was one of the reasons that I didn't apply. I kind of had to look at the bigger picture and think more so, once this process is over, what are these different groups going to need in order to continue to have a fighting chance in this industry? Because the likelihood that they would get a license was not very high, because most people don't have, a quarter million dollars, $1 million just sitting, waiting. You think about cultivation. A lot of these people have been paying a lease every single month, waiting for this process to be over, and they're already, looking at being 9 months behind. So it's definitely a large financial strain. It's not an easy lift at all. And, I commend the 6 minority teams that are, you know, actually in the lottery and awaiting the opportunity.
Right. And I think that segues perfectly into my next question. I think it's now a growing awareness that Black people need to have around like ancillary companies, like what you do with consulting, or even how you now you write for certain publications. So you involve yourselves in more than just trying to figure out how to touch the plant. Like, what are some ancillary opportunities that you think Black people should start to pay attention to in 2021 and beyond?
Well, one thing that I feel like, just as Black people, as people of culture and things like that, people who tend to move the culture, we have to pay attention to branding. That's going to be a major market at the end of the day. We don't have this large share, but we have this large influence. So how do we use that influence to make an impact? So just being creative and, really, like I said, reaching out to your network and understanding, what resources you have available to you. Also getting involved with your local, normal chapters and different advocacy organizations that, work in the space. I feel like that's a really good opportunity just to find out what's going on the ground, and then that way you can kind of be prepared as things continue to unfold.
Right. And you actually introduced our company to Chicago Normal, which we've partnered with you guys a couple of times for like different projects and grants and things like that. What is the normal platform, and kind of how can someone figure out how to get locally involved with their chapter?
Yeah, so Chicago Normal, you can find them on all, platforms at Chicago Normal. I specifically, work with them in their, media presence and helping to expand that. They have general meetings. They still do virtual events. Any local chapter is likely going to be doing something, but if you just go to normal, .org, you can find a chapter close to you. But I will say that Chicago Normal is the only normal chapter that specifically was created to increase the economic development in Black communities. So I feel like that's a really important cause, and a really good thing that people can stand behind.
Okay, cool. And then a question that I like to ask all of my guests is, as we saw what happened in the presidential and Senate elections in 2020, it seems as though we're getting closer maybe to like some federal decriminalization or legalization even. Do you feel like Black people are prepared for this to happen, and that we can actually insert ourselves nationally and not get left out as it does become federally legal?
That's a tough question. I feel that we are making strides in preparing people and just at least bringing them into the circles and becoming aware of what's going on. Um, when you think about the head start that a lot of these companies have gotten in other states, it's not a lot of places that have minority owners. You do have a few, but I don't think it's as many as it should be when you look at federal. I don't think it's as huge of a worry for, like, say, the tobacco industry or the alcohol industry jumping in, because it's just so much regulation around it. It's going to be hard for everybody at every level. But I will say the best way to prepare yourself is to, like I said, get involved with organizations and also with your legislation. Start educating your local legislators about what's coming and about how it affects you specifically, your community. And I feel like if nothing else, that's the best way that we can try to prepare as a people together.
Okay, cool. And as we wrap up, is there any like upcoming projects that you or some people that you're partnering with are working on that you want to share with our viewers?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, we work with various organizations on different tech and media projects. We just wrapped up the Social Equity Applicant Technical Assistance Series with Chicago Normal. It's basically startup advice for how to stand up your cannabis business. We also just did the Survival Economies report with Equity and Transformation. That report is basically a study of the informal economy and how high rates of unemployment, crime, violence, things like that have affected Black informal workers, and what they're doing to survive. And then also, I'm a part of an organization called the Social Equity Empowerment Network. And what we do is work to increase opportunities for Black owners in cannabis. So definitely a couple things that you can look out for, and definitely, hit us up and get involved.
Okay, so the last project you were talking about, how did you kind of come on board that project, and like what's been the roadmap for you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, this is basically a group of actual social equity applicants in Chicago. So we have about 400, almost 400 members. Definitely have a few that are in the current licensing round, so that's exciting. But really, they came together as applicants. I kind of came from the other side, like I said, working in ancillary businesses. And actually, Edie, the executive director of Chicago Normal, kind of connected us, and just bringing everybody's skills together. We kind of just it took off from there, and it's becoming a really impactful organization to be a part of.
Okay, thank you so much, Candice. I know that you're gonna have huge success moving forward. I would love for you to give our viewers where they can find you and your companies on social media, just in case they have any questions they want to ask you directly.
Yes, for sure. So you can find me on Instagram at I am Candice Clark. Also on LinkedIn, Candice M. Clark, and definitely look out for our community-based resource platform. You can find all of these organizations that I've talked about today. You can connect with them and find out different ways to support them. And you can find that at linkupchicago _ on Instagram, and apply for access to our platform at linkupchicago.com/beta.
Okay, and then last thing, I know I said that was the last thing. But the real last thing, you are somebody who uses LinkedIn the right way, and I always preach to people the importance of being able to like properly utilize LinkedIn. Could you please tell our viewers who are not watching this on LinkedIn why it's so important to have a presence on there? Because you are obviously making a lot of connections and partnerships, and that has to have some way, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. I always tell people, LinkedIn is where the real relationships are. If you're a professional, if you're an entrepreneur, you definitely want to make sure you have a LinkedIn profile that's highlighting, the skills and experience that you have. Reach out and make these connections. A lot of these people that I've met, they come to me. They say, "Hey, I saw you on LinkedIn." I'm like, "Oh, people are actually on here." So especially for young Black entrepreneurs, we tend to shy away from LinkedIn, but I feel like it's something we should open up more to. And honestly, I just kind of be myself. I don't really worry about, oh, it's LinkedIn, but I feel like professional is wherever I am because I'm a professional. So,
And you definitely get a higher response rate than just trying to dive in DMs on Instagram. So I always tell people,
exactly.
somebody on LinkedIn is there to do business, So if
Yeah.
you come, with a correct professional demeanor, you're going to get a higher response rate than you would on other platforms.
Yes, for sure. And like I said, that was one of the reasons and that gave us the idea for our platform. LinkedIn, it's great. It's definitely a professional resource, but everyone doesn't feel comfortable. Everyone doesn't feel welcome. So how do we create a space for these organizations and everyone that supports them to feel comfortable and actually do work in this space together? So,
Okay. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you and your company's progress moving forward.
all right. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you to Digital Venture Partners and Green Enterprise. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.